Welcome to the stage our friend, Mr. Kipp Adler.
That was a great introduction. Thank you. All right, give me 1 second. So like Dave said, I've been coming here for a long time. Wait a second. And it's really an honor. I really feel part of the community. I love this group. I've been coming for like 4 years now. And so it's cool that I have an opportunity to share with you some things that are on my heart, on my mind, and I think are pretty relevant today. We have, I can advance it, right? Okay, so I want to talk about the simple power of listening. Could this be the solution to most of life's problems? And could it be that simple? So I will start, I'll introduce myself. So this is me, and this is my contact information. I'll get back to it at the end, but I would love to hear from you if this inspires you in any way, and I like people, I like connecting with people, so here's my information. So I am Kipp, this is me at 14 years old. You too can recover from blonde tips. I was born in Kansas City, and let's see. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, most of you probably are, we're in the middle of America. Kansas City is right where the Missouri and the Kansas River split, and there are two of them. I'm gonna stand off to the side a little bit, make like this. And there are two of them. And then I had the privilege of picking up and moving to Israel at the age of 22. Kansas and Israel are very different. And so I'll get to that in a second. There's a lot of adapting that is required. And I worked as a journalist, a documentarian, started a video marketing company with this handsome fellow right here, Mike. Woo! We have since moved to different locations and had a friendly parting of ways. He has his own production company in DC. And Mike actually gave me the boldness to start working for myself because we were working together. I had a partner, and we were taking Tel Aviv by storm. So we were basically marketing tech startups in Israel. For those of you who don't know, Israel has a huge tech startup scene, and at this point in time, they were just throwing money at these companies, and they were doing very well. They were trying to reach Western American audiences. And so we spoke English, we knew video, we knew content, and we got to work with these people and make videos for them. And it was awesome. And then also I started working as a documentarian while we were doing that. And I had the privilege of, like Dave said, I got to tell so many interesting stories and would really connect with these people. I got to travel the world doing it. This is us in Jordan with an Israeli crew that I worked with that I miss dearly. And this woman is the first woman to own a motorcycle license in Jordan. This is the woman here and her husband. The woman is probably the biggest pop star in Finland. And she was a drug addict, had struggled with mental illness, or lost her sister tragically to drugs. And so she reformed her life, and her husband was an addict also. They both reformed their lives and then started this organization where they just kind of humanize people with mental illness and drug addiction. They don't necessarily obviously the goal is to help them, but they just treat them like people. They go and visit them. We followed them into people's homes and they were just there for people, and it's really amazing work that they're doing. This guy right here is Betts in Sweden, Stockholm, and he was the premier bank robber in Stockholm. I was not aware until we did the documentary that Sweden has a huge crime problem, big problems with crime. And this guy he took us to the first bank he robbed, very interesting guy. He has served his jail time and has reformed his life, and he now works with the Swedish government to try to help people change their lives like he did. As far as I know, he's not robbing banks anymore. Really interesting fella. And this is probably the story that I'm most proud of and was most moved by that I ever had the chance to film or to direct. And so this woman, who you can't see her face because we couldn't show her face, and I can't say too much about her story, but she was sex trafficked from a country in Africa to Greece. This is her son, the father is one of her former clients, and she was seeking asylum in Sweden. Nobody believed her story. It was just a really tough time for asylum seeking when she was seeking it out. And this woman here, Ruth, is a Swedish lawyer who has a non-for-profit to represent people who can't speak for themselves. And she got asylum. She took it to I believe the European Union Supreme Court, fought tooth and nail to get this woman her freedom, and she has a job, she has residency in Sweden, she's raising her son without fear. And talk about like moving stories, and I don't know if you've ever tried to read notes while crying and interviewing somebody, but it was, this to this day is probably the thing I'm most proud that I've ever made. So these just wanted to give you a taste of some of the stories. I cannot operate without notes, so I apologize. Let's see. So now I live in Denver, and I've been here since 2019 with my wife, and we now have a 1-year-old daughter. And if you can tell from my story, I've lived quite an unusual life socially. I've had to adapt a lot. Like I said, Kansas is nothing like Tel Aviv. I speak Hebrew, which is the language that they speak in Israel, but I wasn't fluent, so I didn't really speak the same language literally or metaphorically. So these experiences that I've had, I've traveled the world. You have to connect with people. You have to get them to open up with you about the most personal things in their life when they barely know you. You learn a lot about engaging with people. Even when I don't get it, even when I didn't, I'm trying to understand people that grew up halfway across the world in the Middle East, totally different lifestyle than me, and you just learn to adapt. You learn to get to know people. Anyone who's had a serious romantic relationship can relate, and you probably had to learn it the hard way. That it's not always, you don't always have to be there with answers. Sometimes people just need their worldview validated. And in my opinion, it's not just romantic relationships, it's any relationship. The only way to truly succeed in it is to accept someone else's, the way that they feel and their worldview, even if you don't understand. And so I think that this applies to everything, every human interaction. In order to truly connect with others, you have to let go of yourself. Sometimes. Not all the time. You can't live in this life always being in someone else's reality, but if you want to connect with someone, I think it's the only way to do it authentically. This is what I want to talk about. And I want to talk about it from my experiences, the thing I've learned, and how it can, I believe, enhance your personal life and your professional life. And so this applies, we'll get there. This applies to the theme of simplicity because I think that often the most important truths in life are the simplest. And we don't live in a simple world today, especially. We live in a crazy world. Our biology hasn't really caught up with it. We're constantly bombarded with stimuli. We're constantly bombarded with information. Everything is about optimization. I was speaking to my mom about this the other day that was talking to a relative of ours who's a doctor. And I don't know how long ago, I didn't grow up like this, but doctors used to be a member of your community. They'd be someone you knew. They'd come, they'd do house visits, they cared about you, they were there for you. Now if you go to the doctor today, it's not the doctor's fault, it's the system, they're on a quota. They have to meet a certain amount of patients every day. They have a certain amount of, there's requirements. We're optimizing things to the best of our ability, and we lose something when we do that. But I think that there's always a way to break through the noise and find the simple truths and to find peace and harmony. We learn a lot about mindfulness, meditation, self-discipline, prayer. These are all great ways to find inner peace. And what I want to talk about today is how we can find that peace and that harmony collectively as a community, as people connecting with one another. And I believe that listening holds the key to that. For everything, like I said, personal, professional. I work in media. You're broadcasting to sometimes millions of people. And it's at the end of the day, though, it's interpersonal communications. It's people connecting with people. And I think listening is the way that we can do that effectively. So I'm going to ask a question. Who here has heard the phrase that we're social animals? Is that familiar to people? And if you want to share, obviously, you don't have to, but what does that mean, if you just don't mind raising your hand? Like, what does that mean to you that we're social animals? We thrive among others? We thrive among others. Anybody else?
Wired for connection.
Wired for connection, very true.
Happiest, hand-to-hand, eye-to-eye, face-to-face.
That's right. I'm going to repeat, I assume you can hear it. He says we're happiest hand-to-hand, eye-to-eye, face-to-face. Connecting with people. back there. Yeah. What's the book? So there's a book by David Brooks, Social Animals. He probably knows a lot more than I do. So I think with this topic, like, we are social animals, and this concept is used to describe a lot of behaviors in humanity. And I want to break it down, that we are social, right? I mean, what everybody said is true. Someone said this to me recently: we're better together. And I think that's a really nice way of summarizing it. We're better together. We thrive off personal connection. And that's what we long to do. We are social, but we are also animals. So we are also animals. Which means we have biology that promotes certain behaviors and promotes things that maybe are not so social. We can self-preservation. We can be quite aggressive at times, especially when our own sense of safety and well-being is under attack. So we have this sense of self-protection, which is natural, and it's okay. It's part of who we are, but it's not always helpful. And I think that those two are at odds with each other, being an animal and being social, because the animal tendencies in us are to look out for ourselves. And especially in this world that we're living in, where, like I said, we're bombarded with information, and we're not only required to listen to it, to whatever, be around it, we have to absorb it. We have to act on it. We have performance quotas at work, and we have to, oh, there's a new software out, oh, now you could be more productive. So you are required now to adapt to this fast-paced world that we're not really ready for biologically, like I said earlier. And so I think this causes problems for us as humans, and it makes us lose touch with what it means to be a human and a social animal. So this, we don't have to go through all these charts, but you can see these are studies done about social isolation in the past couple of decades. And as you can see, basically the top left is this feeling of social isolation has gone through the roof, and these are all senses of connectiveness that are plummeting. We're in a state of crisis, really, as people trying to connect with each other, as social animals. We're in a state of crisis, and it's because of all this stress and all these things that I'm talking about. And so we go into this self-preservation mode. I assume I can definitely. I mean, I feel this way a lot. That, you know, we have to, like I said, absorb, act. We're evaluated based on performance, and so we have to preserve our sanity. We have to, like, feel okay with ourselves in some way. So how do we do that? There's a psychological term called heuristics, which a lot of you are probably familiar with. It's like little mental shortcuts, little tricks, little systems. We even have softwares now that help us compartmentalize things, and we're not always in the moment because there's too much going on. And so we have a response. Oh, someone responds to me like this. This is how I respond to these things. We have, you know, how many people, when you're writing a Gmail and it completes it for you, you're like, yeah, that sounds nice enough. I'll just do that. It's because you don't have the time. You don't have the capacity to make this email super personal, and we lose touch with human connection, which is what we all long for. And I believe the solution is simple. I think listening is the key back to one another again. Simple doesn't mean easy. It's arguably the hardest thing you can do, because you have to put someone else's reality ahead of yours. You have to, even if it's just for a moment, you have to try to understand someone else instead of seeing the world through your own eyes. And this applies professionally. Sales and marketing specifically. I run my own business in the marketing space and content and original content. So this is a world that I'm familiar with because I'm always trying to sell myself and always trying to market myself or others. So I'm going to ask you another question. What's your reaction when you're in a public space and you see someone looking around with a clipboard, just waiting for you to walk up to them? Or if you have a door-to-door salesperson that shows up at your house. If you're familiar with Ferris Bueller's Day Off, perhaps you would answer the door if this person was at the door, but it's a joke. But we have this aversion. I think this gentleman here kind of cringed when I said that, because you know that person is not there to connect with you. That person wants something from you. The person has an agenda, and it's not bad. There's nothing wrong with it, but you're not interested typically. You kind of might cross the street to go the other way. And so there's this natural inclination when we feel that someone doesn't want to truly connect with us, that it sort of repulses us. I know that cold sales emails, I think have a 2% response rate, and that's not even a conversion rate. That's just someone that's responding. It's connecting with what you're doing, and I presume door-to-door salespeople have about the same. So when you're trying to sell something, when you're trying to get ahead professionally, which we all need to do in our lives, it's an important part of our lives, it's easy to forget that there's another human being on the other side of that phone call, or that conversation, or that social media post, or that email. We just forget because we're so distanced from the whole thing. We're stressed, we're busy, we're overwhelmed. We don't take the time to be mindful of what's actually going on. We all do it, and it hurts us professionally. This article is by No Film School. If you're in the video production world, especially indie filmmaking, I highly recommend subscribing to this. So this says, saying this word in the first 5 seconds of your video increases views by 100%. Can anybody guess what that word is? You can shout it out. Nailed it. You. When you put the word, this is a study, this has been researched. When you put the word you in a video in the first, 5 seconds? You get a lot more response because you're talking to someone. They feel heard. You're addressing their needs. You're listening. It's about them. And that's what we want. That's what everybody wants. And so just to give you some examples to make this fun, this is a snapshot from the first video that actually me and Mike made together back in 2015, I think. And I'll just play the first little bit of it.
So I just moved to the Bay Area and found this brand spanking new apartment. It wasn't always this easy. A few years ago, I got a phone call for that promotion I always wanted. Problem was, it was on the other side of the country and I had a few weeks to move. So there I was in a new city looking for a new apartment with a new headache.
And all their granola is conflict-free.
And a new crowd. That's why we created Urban.
So this video, we hadn't read that article yet. We didn't know to open with the word you, but we did essentially the same thing. And to be honest, Mike and I didn't really know what we were doing when we made this video. We were brand new. This was the first video that we made together. I was working a full-time job. We did it, I think, until about 2 in the morning in some Airbnb that we rented. But what we did do, because we were young and fresh and eager, is we threw ourselves into it as human beings. And maybe it was to our advantage that we didn't really know what we were doing, because we found out this was about a time when there was a tech boom in San Francisco. Tons of people were moving to San Francisco for jobs. People felt overwhelmed. The Silicon Valley culture has its certain reputation that I think we're all familiar with. And so people were just kind of lost there. We worked a lot with the owners of this company to find out who they were trying to reach, how we can speak to them, what are their problems, and we addressed that in the very opening of this video, where they felt heard. And this video went viral, which, this was back in 2015, so we have, if you look it up on YouTube now, I think there's 48,500 views, but there was another version of it that I think had 60 or something, but whatever, that was a lot back then, back in 2015. And we were fortunate enough to have that result, and I think the reason is because we got people. They felt heard, they felt understood, they felt like we were speaking to them. Okay. So what is listening? How do we do it? So if you ask me, I think that listening is broken down. Oh yeah, okay, we'll keep that on. That comes back up again. So my dad recommended that I come up with acronyms, so I didn't have the time to make it into this one, but SET, you can think of it as. The 3 things that I think are part of listening. And you can feel it's like a little forced. I moved the words around so that I could make an acronym, but the concept is true. That slowing our momentum, right? We're in a hamster wheel. All these things I've been talking about modern society. To be able to actually connect with someone and listen, we just have to slow down a little bit. We start by slowing down. You have to enter somebody else's world. I think that's pretty clear. You kind of put on their viewpoint for a minute. And then you have to try to understand. You have to actually put the effort or remove the effort of just kind of being distracted and just seek to understand them. It's really kind of that simple. And we all know how to listen, right? I'm not like teaching you something that you don't know, but I think it's really easy to forget just how simple it really is. I have a 1-year-old daughter, so I don't know if anybody else has children, but this is Ms. Rachel, or as I like to call her, Baby Crack, because we try not to let my daughter watch TV, but she was sick recently, and so we put this on, and they're just glued to the screen. They love Miss Rachel. And so I just really wanted an excuse to talk about her. So she's got a green screen behind her, and the concept is she says, hey, let's go to a pretend zoo, or let's go to a pretend whatever. And then the whole world around her shifts, and she's in a new place, she's in another environment. And I think that's what we need to do in our communications with other people, is, again, we don't live like this. You can't live in someone else's reality. Being in your own reality is very good and very important. But when you're trying to connect with someone, you step in front of the green screen and go into their world for a second. I studied communication in college. And it was really cool to study, I'd sort of had this life of being an amateur communicator, whatever, for my whole life, just trying to adapt all the time. But now I got to study the theories and models behind it. And I don't want to set it up too much, but my mind was blown when I saw these models, because it takes something that you're familiar with and you do all the time, and it breaks it down for you, and you're like, oh, that's actually what's going on when I'm having a conversation. Very interesting. So our first class was, in our first year, we had a class called Interpersonal Communications. Communication between two people. And it was great. It really felt more like therapy than a college course, because we were, it was like our professor was teaching a bunch of 20-somethings and 18-year-olds how to communicate with one another, and his last name was Hamburger, which was very cool. And so he presented this model early on. And this is, I don't know if it's the most basic communication model, but it's definitely among the more foundational. It's very simple. There's a sender, there's a receiver, the person communicating the message, the person receiving the message. Where it gets tricky is that language is a tool. Anybody can relate to, I just don't have the words for it. I can't put it into words, but you know what I mean, or you're hoping they know what you mean. Language is a tool. The technical term is symbols. We convert abstract thoughts and ideas into symbols, and they go into this open space between you and the next person. And you have to hope and believe that that person is decoding the symbols in the same way that you intended them to be encoded. So this is very simple with a word like table. When I say table, we're probably all thinking of more or less the same thing right now. Spoon, plate, whatever. Think a monkey. I guess monkeys, there's a lot of them. I like monkeys, if you can't tell from my slides. So that's, fair enough. Most people, a lot of words do get through, but it's a little more difficult if you're trying to describe what is love. And if you grew up, okay, good. I was hoping people would get the reference. So when I say love, that's a little more complicated, right? You guys are all probably thinking of something slightly different when I say the word love. And so things can get a little messy, things can get misunderstood. It's even more complicated because noise can get in the way. You can be distracted, you can, whatever, not listen to every word, not hear every word. So this is the foundational way that we communicate. And it's quite simple, sure, but there's a lot of layers to it. It's interpersonal communication, it's human-to-human communication, but it's the foundation of all communication. When you get into mass media, when you're broadcasting something, you're just doing a higher level of the same thing. There's just a lot more receivers, and there's a lot more symbols, and there's a lot more encoding that you have to do. But it's the same thing, and it's the foundation of everything that I do professionally. I have to be thinking of these things constantly. And it's easy to forget, like I said, that you're doing interpersonal communications. Like if you work in marketing or PR or sales or anything like that, you can relate to this, I'm sure. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened, like when okay, wait. Ooh, let's see. Oh my God, I just blew, oh man, that was supposed to get a laugh later. Okay, well, let's see. So I think I have a slide for this. Let me see if I can get there. Okay. So when I interview people, again, I'm trying to get people to open up about something very personal to them in a very quick manner. And so there's a few principles that I apply when I'm doing this. I'll go through this quickly, but the acronym is MESSAGE. And the first one is the McDonald's principle. Repeat things back to people. Repeat the order back. You would be amazed when you're interviewing someone and you repeat back to them what they say, you see the light in their eyes. They're like, oh, this guy's with me. He's listening to me. This is okay. A lot of times, carefully, I will elaborate on what they're saying. I'll add to their thought to show that we're sharing this idea. This is not just you and you're not alone in here. We're sharing this. We're in this together. Smooth transitions. This is just a simple thing. People don't like being stopped in their tracks. It's really easy if someone says something and you disagree or it's confusing to just be like, wait a second, stop, There's easier ways of doing that. I always try to, especially when interviewing someone, connect my next thought to what they just said. So you make it a nice, smooth transition. It all feels part of the same conversation. Active listening. Nod your head, smile, let them know. When I'm interviewing someone, I can't really talk to them because then I'll be picked up on the mic. So you see me like, yeah, that's good. And people like that. You see their energy increase when you do that, when I do that. And genuinely care. You can't be full of it. People pick up on that in a second. You have to find a way, I say engage here, you have to find a way to engage yourself in what they're doing. I don't care if it's the farthest thing from me, I will find a way to be in it with this person, to feel like I care about what they care about and join them in the conversation. Let's see. I'm gonna skip some stuff because we're running low on time. So I'm gonna give a few more examples. Let me go back. So this is part of a series that I made. I worked on with a team when I was leading the content development for it, for a documentary series. It was for the world's largest religious network. So it was broadcast into millions of homes throughout the world. It outperformed the other shows on the network at the time. If you go on YouTube, you can see it has one episode has 2.5 million views, others have 6.5, all collectively 6.5 million views on YouTube. And I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying this because people liked what we were creating. They connected with what we were creating. And it was for an audience that was very interested in Israel, but they didn't know a lot. They loved the country, they prayed for it, they were praying for peace in the country, but it was very far from them. So we took an angle we said, okay, let's call this Insights, and we'll give them an insider perspective. We'll get real Israelis to show them, hey, we're giving you an inside glimpse into this world you care about and want to know more about. And it blew up. I did this also, I'm going to skip, I wanted to share clips, but I don't think I have the time for all of that. Or I got punched in the face by this guy. I asked him to do it. But it was, the story was about Krav Maga, which is a style of martial arts. And so I was just producing this myself, and I didn't have a lot of money. I think I spent $50 on boosting it on Facebook, which if anybody works in the industry, they know that's basically $0. It's not much. But I shared it in a lot of like martial arts groups and gyms and things like that, and people that I knew cared about this topic. I found people who cared about what I was presenting, and it did well. I mean, for an independent thing, there was like 45,000 views. I think it was shared 300 times. I had random people I'd never met before being like, oh, you gotta check this out, and sharing it around. And people engaged with it because I cared about what they cared about. I put forth something that they already cared about. And then this one was this artist here, made this painting. During the 2016 elections. And it caught a lot of buzz for obvious reasons. Okay, so I'll take that off. My mom said I shouldn't leave that on very long. But it also got a lot of engagement and a lot of views, and the reason is because I actually stayed up all night to release it on the day that Trump was elected, because I knew there was a buzz. No matter how you felt about the elections, there was an energy around this topic, and that was the time to release it. If I had released it a week later, I don't think it would have performed that well, because I cared about what people cared about, and so they ate it up. All right, I'm gonna skip this stuff. So I think, I'm going to give a few things professionally that I've learned, and I'm calling them the 3 C's: curiosity, collaboration, and creative comes second. So stay curious. I have a client that I'm working with now that has a specific problem that I felt like I could solve for them. And I reached out to them and I said, hey, I have this idea that I want to talk to you about. No response. I reached out to them again. Hey, I know you have this one problem. I think I have a solution for it. I would love to talk about it. No response. I reached out a third time, and I said, hey, I know you have this problem. I'd love to talk to you more about it and understand it better. I think I might have a way that we could solve it. They responded the next day. I had a meeting with them. I'm working with them now. Because I was curious, because I was interested in what they were interested about, and interested in already. And that's what generated the conversation. Collaboration. The way I say it is be a partner, not a vendor. Join side by side with your clients, care about what they care about. You're not trying to sell them something, you're trying to understand their problem and solve it with them. And then this is specifically for creatives, myself chief among them, that we get caught up in our ideas and craft and style. And the reality is that most people that you're selling your creative ideas to don't really care. I've never had a client care about what camera we're shooting a project on, unless I can connect the camera we're using to a solution that they're looking to solve. Creative is very important. Creative's huge, but it should come second to solving problems. Let's see, I will try to wrap up. Okay, I'll go through this quickly. Yeah, you like the acronyms? So this is Camper. These are for like just social conversations, the kind of like things that I try to remember. Curiosity, that one's kind of obvious. Ask questions. Let someone else be the focus for a second. You don't have to chime in and tell them about, oh, that happened to me once. Just let someone, if you're trying to connect with them, sometimes it's okay to be the one that's being listened to also, like we all need that. But if you're really trying to like connect with someone, let them be the focus for a second. Put aside your ideas, put on their ideas, find out what excites them. And let's talk about that. Let's find a way to connect on that. And this is a big one. Reframe opposition as questions. And I think you'll be really surprised if you disagree with someone and you ask them, oh, that's interesting. I've thought this, why do you think that? I've had my mind changed multiple times when you're very sure that you're right about something, if you just ask a question. And let's see, it's 10 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap it up there with just a few final words of, in a time where billions of dollars are being spent across multiple industries to trick us into thinking that arguments, hard stances, and viewing the world through the lens of us versus them is the only way to live, if we practice the simple act of listening and try to understand people before we argue with them, though you can argue with people, and if we try to understand our clients before we pitch to them, though you can pitch to them, but listen first. That's my advice. And maybe, just maybe, we'll get closer to aligning on what it truly means to love. Thank you.